we're talking wedding cake consultations today. I thought that would be quite a nice topic to have a chat about. And a couple of you put some questions in on the Wednesday question that I put in on Wednesday. So I'll go through how I do them. And you might be able to pick up a few ideas and things. Because I've changed them. Hello, Varsha. Hello. I've changed how I've done them over the last couple of years, and I've sort of adapted and that kind of thing. So I'll sort of tell you what I do. Obviously, any questions or comments, or if you're someone that does them already, please do chip in. I'm more than happy to have people offer suggestions and things. No problem at all with that. So I've changed a little how I've done them. Obviously, during lockdown, things were a little bit different. I mean, Zoom was just fantastic resource. And I said all the way through lockdown, what would we all have done had this happened before the internet? We'd have all gone completely bonkers, wouldn't we? But yes, so luckily we had Zoom, so we could still connect with couples, even though we couldn't do weddings. Couples could still be organising and arranging and booking and things like that, which was fabulous. And of course, the follow on from that is that you can still do that. You can still consult online. In my experience, lots of couples do like it. Some prefer a telephone call. Some are okay with the Zoom, and some prefer the actual meetup. And it really depends on your couple. A little bit to do with your ideal client, which we've talked about before. But it's also to do with how your couple view their wedding, if you like. So you have couples that are quite practical and business minded about it. They just want to get things done. They just want to organize things. They want to do it as efficiently as possible. So those are the type of people that are more than happy with the Zoom. Half an hour on the Zoom, sorted. And they can tick it off and go on to the next thing. But you also get your couples, particularly brides, I have to say, who want the full experience. They're the type of bride that want to do the full going into a bridal dress boutique and drinking champagne and spending all morning and having canapes. And they want to do the whole thing. And those are the types of couples that want to have a sit-down consultation with tasters, and they want the full experience. So it really depends on who your couples are. But it's a good thing, I think, to actually offer a couple of choices so that they can pick what they want, really. Because choice is good. Not too much choice. If you give people too much choice, they're I don't know. But you can say, right, you can have a phone call or a Zoom call, or we can meet. I do actually offer. I say, right, we can have an initial Zoom call or a phone call just to get a few basics sorted out, and then we can arrange a consultation later to do the tasting and get the finer details down. And some people go for that as well. They quite like that. So it's really morning, Leslie, morning. It really is a question of setting down yourself what it is you're prepared to offer, sharing that with your couples, and then letting them choose whatever they like. Okay, so the way I do it is I say, as I've just said, we can have a quick Zoom call or quick phone call to get the details down. So it's things like, obviously, where is it? When is it? Although I'd probably establish the date before I even go into consultations, because if you're not free, there's no point in even having a 15-minute call. Things like number of guests they have, the size of cake they think they're after, and possibly a few details about, the style. Talk about the venue. If you don't know the venue, ask them about the venue. And those kind of things, those kind of basic things, so you can start to get a feel of what kind of couple they are and what kind of cake they're likely to want. They might say to you, oh, we'll send over a few pictures of cakes we like. And then you can start thinking about, you know, what kind of cake you're going to suggest to them. I always say, and I know lots of you do this as well, you know, I'm not going to copy a cake exactly, but I'm going to take features of the cakes that you like and make a cake unique to you. We like this phrase. We like make a cake that is uniquely you. I think some people think that the word unique is overused, but I don't think it is. I think couples, particularly brides, like the thought that their cake no one else has got or no one else has had, and theirs is the only one. So big that up, because obviously we don't, I mean, if it's a fairly generic cake, I mean, this one behind me here is fairly generic, you know, there's not a lot of major design in that one. And your basic semi-naked cake, which is very popular at the moment, those kind of things, you know, if someone gives you a picture and says, we want this, you can say, yes, I can do that for you. But if it's a bit more involved and a bit more detailed, you can say, well, I won't copy that because that's someone else's design, but I can take the bits that you like and I can adapt it to make something that's just for you. And also, just as a side point, put something about that in your terms and conditions as well. Put something in that says, we do not copy designs, but we will take features, something like that. Okay, perhaps we'll talk about terms and conditions on another session, but just bear that in mind. Okie dokie. Oh, good. Oh, I'm glad you like them, Vash. You love them much. Oh, my words. These are my favorite words. I use these all the time. I'm always banging on about these. I'll do a session on these at some point. I think if you've got these three, you can't fail. But yes, I will do a session on these at some point. Right. So let's think about so the couple have said, yes, we'd like a consultation. And I know Celine asked a question about where you do them. If they want an in-person one, where do you do them? And my answer to that is, ideally, suggest to meet at their wedding venue. If it's at all practical and possible, arrange them to meet them there. If they live a long way from it, which in my experience they do, I've got a lot of couples who live in London who come down to East Sussex and Kent to get married. The chances are they will come down to that venue to look around and to talk with the wedding coordinator and that kind of thing. So see if there are any dates that they're at the venue that you can then go and meet them. Because obviously being at the venue, if you don't know the venue, it's brilliant, because then you can go and get a lie of the land, see where the cake's going to be, you know, understand where you're going to park your car, are there only loads of steps to get up there, that kind of thing, those practical things. And you can just you can meet the wedding coordinator, get to know them, and that really is a win-win. So if possible, arrange to meet them at the venue. If that's not possible, if the venue is something slightly different, perhaps a village hall or something like that, then perhaps offer to meet somewhere near to that, so you get a feel for the area. I don't know, even just meeting in a pub or a cafe is fine. I wouldn't recommend, I have done this before, but I wouldn't actually recommend saying, oh, I'll come to your home, for obvious reasons for that, although I have done it before. But I think from now on, I wouldn't necessarily do that. And I certainly wouldn't have them here. My house is a complete mess. It would not give the right impression at all. So even though I think I am insured, I think I got the insurance so that I could, but I don't. But yeah, the venue, see if you can meet at the venue. I mean, if the venue is an open, it's a hotel or something, they're going to have people coming and going all the time. So that's, you're not going to have a problem with that. If it's a venue that's a little bit more exclusive and needs appointments, you can phone the wedding coordinator or whatever, you can arrange something. But that would be the first choice. Other than that, meet in a cafe or a pub or something like that. near to the venue or near to where the couple live. Obviously, there's all the logistics of how close and how far and all that kind of stuff. Now, when it comes to charging for that, if they want to meet up before they've booked the cake, I will charge for an in-person consultation, but I will bring a wedding taster box as well. I think it's £40 at the moment I'm charging for that. But if they then go on to book a cake that's £400 or more, I will take that £40 off. I will deduct it. Okay. So yes, I do charge. If they have already paid an initial payment, on the quote sheet or on the receipt or the whatever it is, the invoice, whatever it is we call it, I will put a price and I will say it includes delivery, setup, consultation and taster box, so they can see that all that is included. So once they've paid their initial payment, they get the consultation and the taster box as part of the deal. Okay. I always say to them in the initial consultation when we're on the phone or having a quick Zoom, I'll say, actually, flavours for your cake. For me, it doesn't make any difference, the flavour to the price. I don't charge differently. So if a cake is salted caramel or white chocolate and raspberry or chocolate or Victoria sponge, all the same price for me. I charge it to a sort of what the most will cost. And so it doesn't make a difference. So they can relax a bit. They haven't got to then choose their flavours before I can quote them. They can relax a bit and say, oh yeah, we can take our time to choose the flavours, perhaps have a bit of a look and a bit of a think and ask around and see what we like. So I let them relax a bit with the flavours. So either I will take a box. I haven't got one with me. I bought some new boxes over the Christmas holidays, and I found some lovely ones. They sort of look like chocolate boxes, and they're lovely, and you pull the lid off and I can do a ribbon on them and that kind of thing. So I'm going to use those from now on because they look rather swish. So I would, in an in-person consultation, I will take one of those with me, and I will do the cake slices so that they're in a nice row and wrap them in, cellophane, that kind of thing. Perhaps we can do a thing on taster boxes. We can get people to show what they do and we can share some ideas on that. Alternatively, I offer to post them. I've done loads and loads of taster box deliveries. I used to do them so that they are letterbox size, but they are quite thin. You can't go more than 2.5 centimeters thick for letterbox. It is possible to do them, and I've done loads of them like that. But now I've changed my boxing and my setup with that. It's now going to be probably different. But just beware of if you're going to send them by post. I think a lot of you do postal things elsewhere anyway. But think about the timing. I make mine, say for example, I make my tasters on a Monday. I get them in the post by last post, which is about 5 o'clock near me. First class Royal Mail delivery. More often than not, they've arrived the following morning at where they're going. So of course they're lovely and fresh. I did have one incident, was it last year, the year before, where I sent my taster boxes out, and about 10 days or so later, I had a bride contact me and say, we're really disappointed with these. They were really dry. And I thought, my cake isn't dry. What's going on here? And I looked into, asked her a few questions, and it turned out I'd sent them on I think it was the Wednesday, put them in the post box 5 o'clock Wednesday. She hadn't got them till the Tuesday after. So once I found that out, I said, oh, no problem, I'll send you another batch, which then arrived the next day and all was hunky-dory. So it is worth communicating. Once you've sent them, send an email, say they're in the post, they're on their way, so that if they are delayed or they don't get them, they don't think that your cake is all dry and horrible. It's all to do with communication, isn't it? Communicate all the time. Oh, morning, Louise. Don't worry about being late, lovely. Oh, and Claire's here too. Hello, Claire. So yes, I charge for obviously a postal box, unless they've already paid a payment, in which case they would have that as part of the deal. And yeah, if I'm doing an in-person consultation, I take a box. If they've not paid for a cake yet, I charge them for that. But if they have, that is included. I hope that's all makes sense. And I hope you can pluck out from what I'm saying things that you would do, and perhaps things, and if there's things that I do that you wouldn't, then that's absolutely fine. I'm not saying that my way is the be all and end all. But if you can sort of take some ideas, then that's brilliant, isn't it? Excuse me. All right. So hopefully that's sort of venue and a bit of charging sorted out. Becca asked about weekends. Yes, most couples are possibly likely to want a weekend booking. In my experience, if they're going to go and see the venue, it's going to be, actually most of mine have been like Sundays. They've gone to the venue to have a look. So you do need to be flexible with that, because most of them will be working. That's just the way that it is sometimes. So yes, so you can offer obviously any time that you are available, but they will understand also that you are busy and you are working and you have other appointments. Most couples don't think that once they've booked you, you are at their exclusive beck and call. In fact, I think most couples, if they thought that you were their only booking, they would be reluctant to book. Why is this person not busy? But anyway, so yeah, be flexible. Weekends not a problem usually. In fact, most couples in my experience prefer a weekend. They can relax. They can, as you get into more in the summer and the evenings are lighter, they might suggest something, in the evening. But in my experience, they don't tend to want to sort of do them in the winters when it's dark. They want to be somewhere during the daytime for those. I hope that's answered your question, Becca. Oh, Gwyneth, hello, Gwen, how are you? That's a really good question, Gwyneth. I always feel really awkward asking for payment for the tasting box. How do I do it? I just do it. I just ask. Oh, in fact, I don't ask. I say, this is how I do it. I say, when I do the initial contact with them, either by email or I'd have a quick call or I have a quick Zoom, I just sort of run through, this is how I do things. I talk about, I'll give you a price for your cake. The initial payment is 30%. Or you can do a save the day payment. I think mine's 75 now. I say you can have a consultation. If you've already paid me a payment, that is free. That is part of the deal. If you haven't, I will charge £40, which you will then get back if you order a cake of £400 or more. I just sort of matter of fact, this is how I run my business. I certainly don't apologize. I don't do any of the, oh, I'm really sorry, but I've got to because of all the costs. Don't do any of that. I just do, this is how I do it. This is the way I do it. And they'll take it out. I have people that pay deposits, so I don't call them deposits, initial payments. I'll talk about that at some point. And then I can say, right, well, yeah, we're included. Let's sort out a consultation. Let's get a taster box sorted out. But some of them, they are a bit cautious. They're spending a lot of money. So they do want a taster box. And I don't think I've ever had a couple that have said, oh, no, we won't bother then when I say I'm charging for a taster box. And to be honest, you don't really want a couple that says that. The red flags and bells ring, don't they, when you... Yeah, by then, yeah, okay. You want people that are wanting to invest and to do this properly and to actually, want a quality cake, and they will understand that if they want a quality cake, they want to deal with a proper business, and that's how the business does it. I hope that answers your question, Gwen. Does that answer your question? Yes. If you want wording, I can put my wording. I'll see if I can find somewhere where I've written it down, and I'll put that in the group somewhere, and you can obviously borrow that. List of questions. Yeah, we'll come on to that, Varsha. That's on my list as well, my lovely. Yeah, we'll come to that. Let's just talk quickly about Zoom, because Tasha asked, how do you keep your children quiet while you're on Zoom? It might have been tongue-in-cheek, Tasha, but it's a perfectly valid question. And having been a primary teacher for 30 years, I know about how children's brains work. I don't know how old yours are, though. And it really depends. So a few tips about keeping your children quiet during Zoom lessons, doing Zoom sessions. First of all, if they're old enough, just explain what it is you're doing. You know, mummy's talking to some important people, and it's all very exciting. Secondly, the thing with children is you don't say don't. You don't say don't make a noise. You don't say don't interrupt me. You turn it into a do. So my advice would be talk to the children beforehand and say, what would you like to do while mummy is busy? So it might be that they want to watch a bit of a film, or they want to do some playing, or play with Lego, or play with something that they wouldn't normally play with. Or yeah, perhaps there's a film that they'd like to watch. Give them a snack. A little bit of bribery doesn't go amiss, it must be said. So think of it as do rather than don't. And then once you've finished, you praise them up big time. Obviously, that was fabulous, aren't you good, and all that, rewards, all that kind of stuff. And then they see the positive. There's nothing worse as a child. I remember this when I was little, obviously not Zoom sessions, but when my parents, you know, had meetings with people in the dining room or whatever, and that you mustn't make a noise, you mustn't do this, you mustn't do that, is really makes you quite anxious. So do it as what would you like to do while mummy's busy? You know, do it from that point of view. I hope that helps. Children like positive. Children prefer the positive to the negative. And you can always turn it into a game. I don't know. Let's see just how quiet you can be obviously it depends on their age. Let's see how quiet you can be while mummy's working. That kind of thing. I hope that answers your question, Tasha. Oh, Nicola's here. Hello, Nicola. Right, so let's talk about questions. Really, you've got to find out everything that you need to, sounds blooming obvious, but you need to find out everything that you need to make their cake splendid. So you need to find out, obviously, by the time you get to the consultation stage, you've established the date, you've established the venue. Because if you haven't established those by that point, it might be a very short consultation. And by the way, it's worth establishing the venue, because I had an initial contact a couple of times actually by people that have Googled me. And when I start talking to them, I say, where's your venue? And I think, oh, I've not heard of that one. And it turns out it's about 300 miles away. And Google has just thrown up my name. So it's worth just establishing the venue is doable, that you're not, you know, going 500 miles for this cake. So establish the venue, establish the date. All right. Once you've done that, the next questions I would ask, in fact, probably one of the first questions I would ask is, how many people do you want this cake to serve? That then gives me an idea of the size. I can then start talking about size. And I have behind me, you can see my dummy. So if I'm doing a quick online thing, I can say, oh yes, this cake behind me, I think that's a 579. And that will feed about this many. And sometimes I get the dummies down and I show them what the cakes actually look like, which is quite useful. So size, Sorry, I keep knocking my desk and I keep wobbling. So size, establish some kind of size. Establish whether they've got any ideas already, because the bride, it's usually the bride, I say it's bride because it usually is, will have, is likely to have an idea. And I've said this before, it's worth remembering that, and again, it's usually the bride, even before she's engaged, will be looking at wedding things. Once she realizes that this wedding is possible and at some point it will happen, she will start looking and she will start getting ideas. So it's usually she. Obviously there's same-sex weddings and that kind of thing, but it's usually the bride that does this planning way ahead. So they will have an idea of the kind of cake. It's very, very rare that you get a couple that go, oh, we don't know really, we haven't really thought about that. Doesn't generally happen. They'll have some kind of an idea. So get the style, talk a little bit about the venue. If you know it, brilliant, you can sort of talk about it. Obviously that's if you're a bit more experienced. If you don't know it at all and you've never been there, you can ask them a little bit about it. If you've perhaps, like, I don't know, like it's somewhere like Hever Castle. So before I did weddings there, I'd actually been there as a visitor. So I knew a little bit about Hever Castle, so I could say, oh, beautiful venue, blah, blah, blah. But now that I've done a couple of weddings there, I can say to them, oh, whereabouts is it? Is it in the loggia or is it in the actual castle itself? And I can, you know, talk a little bit about that. So talk about the venue. If you feel bold, you can talk about budget. That's something I don't necessarily talk about to start with. I might suggest it perhaps in an email or in an initial communication. It just helps because you don't want to go through it all, spend, you know, quite a lot of time sorting out a design and quoting, only for them to say, oh no, we've only got a budget of 200. Bit tricky that. Hopefully you've got on your website or you've got somewhere on in your information some kind of guide price, so they've seen roughly the ballpark that they're talking about. That's when that is valuable, because if you've got nothing on prices at all on your website and these people have never ordered a wedding cake before and have no experience, they're not going to have a clue where to place it. It's like I said once before, it's like if I wanted someone to come and lay my patio, I wouldn't have the foggiest clue. I wouldn't know if it was 100 quid or 1,000 quid. I wouldn't have a clue. But if I went on a website and it said price guide around this, I'd go, oh, okay, yeah, I can see where I am now. So think about this when you're talking to your couples. The chances are they haven't got a clue. They've perhaps been guided. They've been on, you know, websites, or they've been on to places that say, allow this much for your cake. But you can't always guarantee that that's going to be accurate. You know, if they go to someone that says, allow £200 for your cake, they're not going to get much for that, are they? So you can drop in, you know, pricing guides as you go along. So you could say, oh, yes, well, that kind of cake will start at about 350 is what you're looking at there. And then they can start to get an idea of what the price range is. So we're talking venue, date, size, any kind of style. If they've got any pictures, which they're likely to have, and they're likely to be Pinterest pictures. I say this all the time. Say to them, oh yeah, send those over and I'll have a look and see what I can, you know, I can design for you. Because they like that. They like things to be designed. What else? What else would I ask them? You can talk about flavors if you've got any, you know, specific flavors you really like. But as I said earlier, I tend to say, well, that's not important at the moment. We can sort flavors out later. Oh yeah, one thing you might want to talk about is, you know, are there any allergies I need to be aware of, any specific requirements? You can just establish that. More often than not, they might say, oh no, we don't think so. They might say, oh yes, we've got a couple of people who need gluten-free, in which case you can say, oh yeah, well, I could do you a tier, that, you know, that kind of thing. You can establish anything like that to start with. And I will say to them, you know, it's best to establish that at the beginning. I once, a couple of, God, when was it? I can't remember when it was, but I had a cake booked, and 2 weeks before the wedding, she said, any chance we can make it vegan? No, sorry, I can't. But what I did say, I said, I can do you some vegan cupcakes if you like. But this just goes to show you how people don't understand how we work and how things work. But there we go. Oh, Lola's here. Hello, Kate. Hello, Selena. Louise says, double check the date early in the consultation. I had an inquiry for 8th of July, so did the consult. Almost at the end, it turned out the bridesmaid should have asked for the 8th of June. Yes, double check. That's a really good point, actually, Louise, really good point. Check the year as well. And when you do your quote, and when you talk to the couple about their wedding, put the day of the week. So it is, for example, let's pick one out. Friday, the 19th of May, 2023. Then when they read that, they can go, it's not Friday, what are they talking about? And then you've realized that actually you've got the wrong year. So write the date in full with the day of the week. Then any mistakes will come to light. But that is a really good point. Double check your dates. Write them down with the day of the week. Okay, good point, Louise. Thank you for that, my lovely. So the guide price includes level of decoration. Yeah, good question, Louise. My guide prices on my website would be starts at. Actually, it's not really. It's a sort of average kind of, a guide is sort of an average. I think if you do starts at, you get in trouble because no one wants the real basic. No, not really. So my guide price might include perhaps a couple of flowers, or it might include a bit of stenciling, something like that. And then they're wonderfully surprised if they do want something really, really basic and it's actually less than the guide price then. But, you know, it is worth, if they want, like there's one cake, I was contacted, didn't hear back, and you'll find out why probably. I was sent a picture and it must have been 10 tiers. It looked like an Asian wedding cake, actually. It was really big, different shaped tiers, different height tiers, lots of gold moldings on it, some lace, and some stenciling on there. There was everything on this cake. Plus it had a whole swathe of sugar roses all the way around the cake to the top. It was a humdinger, this cake. Not what I'd choose for my own wedding, but then, you know. So I looked at the picture, I thought, and I estimated the number of roses, and I estimated this, that, and the other. And actually, when I priced it all up, it came to over £3,000, this cake. Because, you know, that's what it would take me to make. There were hundreds and hundreds of roses on this cake. So there was all the moldings, there was the gold, there was the, you know, this, that, and the other. So if they found anyone to do it for much less than, you know, that, good luck to them. That's all I can say. But you've got to price according. You can't. We talked about pricing last week, didn't we? But when you give a guide price or an average price or a ballpark, say, well, that would include a couple of sugar flowers, or that would include the stenciling you like, or that, so tell them what that kind of thing would include. Sometimes when I do a quote, I've had a consultation and they're perhaps not sure. And I'll say, well, I'll send you over the price for 2 or 3 options. Then you can choose which one is best for you. So I might send, a slightly smaller cake with less servings is this much. Bigger cake with all the sugar flowers you like is this much. And then they can sort of have a look and decide. Don't give too many options. More than 3 is probably not a good idea. But then they can sort of see how the prices go. And they don't always choose the cheapest one. Believe me, they don't always choose the cheapest one. So that's worth bearing in mind as well, saying to them, well, I can send you over a couple of prices and you can have a look and see which one you want to go for. Okay. Leslie, that is an excellent question. In the current climate, how do you quote for cakes that will be next year or the year after? For next year, at the moment, I'm adding 10%. But there is also a clause in my terms and conditions that says words to the effect of, we reserve the right to increase the price should the cost of certain things rise. I can't remember the wording. I'll put the wording in somewhere. But it basically says, if the price of flour increases 1,000%, we can charge you a little bit more. That kind of thing. But generally, I think in with wedding cakes and the wedding industry, the general consensus is for each year ahead, it's 10% on what you would charge now. And I know this is the same for other wedding people. I've heard photographers say that, and I've heard florists say that as well. So price it up for now, add 10%, and that would be for next year. But have it in your terms and conditions. So, if petrol, for example, went completely bonkers again and you were driving 100 miles, you could say, well, really sorry, but I'm having to increase that charge. But you do that in good time, of course. You do that in good time. There's a point at which you would have to commit to the price that you quoted and that they have agreed with. You'd have to give them a little bit of warning if you were going to increase the prices. But I think that's generally the consensus. I know there are some people that don't book more than 2 years ahead, which is possibly a good thing. But you can put people on a waiting list. You can put people on an interest list. You can get them to do a save the date, which is just a payment which secures that date. But then you sort out the actual details and the cost of the cake nearer the time. That's a good way of doing it as well. So you can start booking out 2025 or whatever, but without actually having to work out any of the costs yet. So I hope that answers your question. Yes, add it to your terms and conditions, Selena. Terms and conditions are gold. It's your pot of gold, your terms and conditions. I hope that answers your question, Leslie. What else was I going to? I think that was sort of it. I hope that's answered the question about what we ask. Who asked that? I can't remember who asked that now. Varsha asked that, as well as someone in the group as well. I think that sort of covers what you need to find out. But it's also a good idea, particularly if they haven't committed to you yet and haven't paid you anything, to really chat to them, get to know them, get a relationship going with them. If you're on a Zoom call and you see a dog in the background or a cat, start to bond with things that you might have in common. Because the more they warm to you, the more they know, like, and trust you, the much more likely they are to book you. Okay. It doesn't mean you become unprofessional at all. You don't, that doesn't mean that at all. But you can be chatting to them. You might find out that they lived near somewhere you lived. You might find out that they, I don't know, they have a particular hobby that you share. say cats and dogs are always a good one. If you make a fuss over a cat or a dog, they're, you know, if they've got small children, talk about, you know, children. You can talk about the rest of their wedding planning. How's your wedding planning going? Had any problems? Because it's always worth remembering that although you are obviously trying to get them to buy from you, it's also worth remembering that you're helping them. You're not selling to them, you're helping them to buy. If you think about the difference of that, you're helping them to buy. So you're not only helping them to buy what you're offering, but you're helping them with everything else they need. And the more you do that, the more they will trust you and think, oh, actually, this person she's going to be a real valuable asset to what we're doing. So, you know, get a bit of a relationship going with them. It doesn't mean that, don't get so friendly that you're, you know, your best buddies, because there is a fine line that you need to stay one side of, because the moment you start getting all friendly and chummy is when they start asking for little extras for nothing. Stay professional, but you can still be, you know, liked and trusted even within those boundaries. I hope that makes sense. Oh, good. Oh, I'm glad you found them useful. It was me that asked about consultation. Oh, righty ho. I hope that's all answered. I'm just checking to see if you've got anything I've missed. I don't think I've missed anything. If you have, just pop it quickly now, and I will we'll have a look at that. I hope that's answered the questions about the questions, what you need to ask. It's really everything you need to be able to put a detailed quote together. You need to know what kind of cake, you need to know what they want on it, you need to know how big it is, you need to know the kind of style. I mean, some brides come to me and say, I want a 4-tier cake. you know, they've got a fairly grand venue, they want a fairly tall cake. So you work within the parameters of a 4-tier cake. You might say, oh, you know, if you've only got 80 guests, but you want a 4-tier cake, what about a dummy layer? It won't necessarily cost less, but it'll be less waste. You know, those kind of things. So chat to them and yes. Right. I hope that has been useful. If you have any more questions on it, obviously just ask in the group, and either me or someone else who knows about these things will answer, I'm sure. And if you do have them, you know, once you do start having them, do let us know how they go. Do let us know if there's anything you do differently next time, because it's those things that help us to build our experience, isn't it? You do a consultation, you think, oh gosh, I'll never ask that again, or or I forgot to ask this, so I must remember to ask that next time. So do share your experiences with us, because it's rather good to do that. Righty ho. I shall oh, Tanya's here. Hello, Tanya. I shall leave you there. I'll put this recording in the guides section in the Facebook group so that you can go back to it if you need to. Other than that, I'll be in the group. Have a lovely weekend. If you're doing anything wedding cakey at the weekend, do let us know. Do share it with us, because it's always good to see what everyone's up to. Other than that, I will see you next week. Well, now next week, can you, oh, hang on, can you reuse the dummy cakes? Oh, yes. Well, I suppose it depends. If you're giving them a cake with a dummy layer, then that's theirs. I wouldn't necessarily ask for it back. But these dummies, I reuse these all the time. You just put them in the dishwasher. If they've just got sugar paste on, put them in the dishwasher and it just cleans them. Not if you've got buttercream on them though, because that will clog everything up. Scrape the buttercream off, but put them in the dishwasher. They reuse, and they'll last a good, depending on what you do with them and how much stuff you poke in them, they will last quite a few incarnations of cake. I think some of those ones I've got up there, that's about the 3rd or 4th cake that I've used for them. Anyway, You have a wedding fair on Sunday, Selena. Oh, and Gwyn's doing a wedding fair on Sunday. Oh, do show us your pictures and show us what you do. Share what you do. I know loads of people are doing wedding fairs for the first time. So do share any tips, anything that you think is really good to do. And just set up, because that's a lot of questions that we have. How do you make your table look? So do take pictures of it, because you put that on social media anyway, don't you? It's always good to have pictures of your setup for your social media, but share it with us because we'd love to see it. Fabulous. Righty-ho then, my lovelies. I will leave it there. Wedding cake, Tanya. Don't be scared, my lovely. We're here to back you up to anything you need. Just ask in the group. That's what we're here for. Exciting. Well done. Righty-ho. I'll leave you there. Have a lovely weekend. Have a lovely week. Oh, and I was just about to say next week, we're going to have a talk about websites, and that's going to be an evening one, because we've got Matt coming in. Tasha's other half, Matt, is coming in to talk to us about websites, setting up websites, what's important about websites, possibly a bit about SEO. If you don't know what that is, you soon will. So next week it's going to be a 6 o'clock session, recorded, obviously. So if you can't come at 6, it'll be recorded. And that will be all about websites. So very exciting. Looking forward to that. Righty-ho. Have a good day. Have a good weekend. Have a good week. And I will hopefully see you next week. All right, my lovelies. Bye-bye.